This video is intended for educational purposes. Opinions made by me or the Sage Seeds AI are not investment advice. Today we're going to validate the Sage Seeds Artificial Intelligence's top-ranking LG display. Out of all the companies, thousands and thousands of data inputs, this was the very best ranking for the 2023 season, the current season of annual reports, the most recently completed season of annual reports. To validate, we are going to walk through the 2023 annual report of LG Display. Again, this is the most recent available annual report. We know that our in-house AI is recommending this as value, but our job is to validate what is the fundamental reason behind the numbers, unpack what we discover, and essentially confirm or reject what the AI is seeing. Talk to each other, like and subscribe, share with your friends, and let's dive in so that your wisdom can blossom. As we're looking through the management's discussion, management seems very focused on guiding LG Display away from producing the historical LCD type panels to increase focus on producing OLED panels. The immediate effect of this does seem to be shifting resources away from China and Korea. While they're paying for this shift, which does involve capex in order to refit factories, entirely new supply chains being built up, 1.2 billion in advances that it received in US dollars has been received at a very lucky time. The continued overall depreciation of the Korean won against the US dollar, this historical outlier in terms of how these two currencies are valued relative to each other, has had two effects, one positive, one negative. Those advances that they received at the end of 2023 do seem like a genius stroke, even though it probably wasn't the intention, although maybe it was now that I'm reading through the management's discussion. Putting future revenue in their books already as US dollars has essentially made this Korean multinational stand out relative to every other Korean multinational. Now, many of those might have dollars as well, but not many of those have $1.2 billion when they're only a $4 billion company. That's the positive. The negative is that as they're switching to OLED panels, much of the supplies that they now need for the new technology, the new display screens, well, a lot of the cost of sales of that product line is denominated in US dollars. That doesn't take away from the fact that this is overall hugely positive, but it does drag on how positive it can be. Cost of sales has increased at a historically high rate. This company knew that they were going to have to be paying more of their inputs in US dollars, and so it only made logical sense to ask customers for US dollars when they were going to have to be paying for the input costs in US dollars. Was it complete luck? Was it a complete masterclass in currency management? It could have been somewhere in between, a bit of both. Here, management provides a breakdown of how revenue is changing. Little bit of an ugly table. I'll just give you the highlights. Panels for televisions are lowering sales kind of significantly. Panels for IT products are lowering less significantly. And panels for mobile and other applications is growing. Mobile and other applications does include smartphones, all types of mobile phones, industrial, such as entertainment systems, automotive displays, portable navigation devices, and medical diagnostic equipment. Historically, these more kind of niche display products have been serviced by other display companies that are smaller and more specialized. But as LG Display has built up an economy of scale, it is now able to dramatically compete in all these more niche markets, essentially undercutting the more specialized competitors. If all you focus on is medical diagnostic equipment displays, you can imagine it's a little bit scary to compete on price with the big giant LG Display. Giant in the sense that it already makes displays for all these other lines of business, and so it's able to sacrifice some profit margin in the one business line. Classic case of whoever gets the economy of scale first has an opportunity, but again, I'll remind us it's tied in with this very not classic currency rate changes, stroke of luck, genius, war chest in US dollars when you're a Korean multinational shifting towards US business. My main question still is though, is I don't know why they received those advances. I still have not seen an explanation of what those advances were paid for, just that they were paid and that they came at a good time. So let's keep looking. For those keeping track, mobile and other applications have for the first time become more than 50%. They're exactly 52.6% of the business of LG Display. This is the first time that that segment has been more than half of all sales. But the way this trend is looking, it is certainly going to grow much higher than this in the coming years if trends continue as they have been. This is especially fortunate when you consider that the average selling price for each of these panels has been basically flat for television, decreasing for IT products, although not by a crazy amount, but increasing somewhat noticeably for the mobile and other applications. Right now, that has led to the all panels average selling price still dropping, but when you consider that they're selling just a fraction of the television sets that they were 2 years ago, and televisions are in the 300s average selling price, whereas mobile is less than 100 average selling price, well then take that as a sign that this average selling price is likely to continue to drop for the foreseeable future, but at a much slower pace, and that even though LG Display is going to make noticeably less per sale, it is banking on the fact that there are going to be multiple times more mobile and other application displays in the new world that we're building relative to how many displays there were in the television era. The television era, according to what we're seeing here in LG Display, is quickly unwinding right before our eyes. Less and less people care about needing a television in the home, but it is becoming everyone's experience that for every member of the family, you have at least one screen fully dedicated for yourself. Many people have found that they have multiple screens, laptops, phones, tablets, etc., etc. And that's all just the beginning, because as businesses catch on to this trend, we're seeing things like 15 self-service screens where there used to be just one checkout in grocery stores. Hospital rooms are becoming information hubs where the patient is able to see on screens more information than they ever have before, etc., etc. Who knows what else is in store, but it seems like a good bet, which might be what the Sage Seeds AI was picking up on, to guess that the future has more screens in store, not less. And so it's okay if you're selling these screens for a little bit less. In fact, that probably makes sense. You're just selling so many more screens overall that this is more than okay. But the immediate consequence is a revenue that decreased by 19.1% from 2022 to 2023. And here it becomes clear in my mind why people are running away on Wall Street. People are running away from LG Display. At a surface level, what do the stats look like? Well, they look like very decreasing revenues, which is the opposite of a growing economy of scale. And I'm pretty sure there was negative gross profit in 2023. A surprise negative gross profit, maybe, probably not, for people realizing that they were shutting down LCD factories in order to prepare to sell large billions of dollars worth of OLED. But the difference between understanding that that was a deliberate choice or not would understandably completely change a prospective investor's understanding of these statistics. LG Display has an ugly income statement. IT product panel sales decreased by 30%, and 22% of that decrease did directly come from a decrease in the average selling price. And so the price is falling. They're not even necessarily selling that fewer panels. It's just people don't want to pay them for these panels in the IT segment nearly as much as they did last year. Of course, that is scary for any potential investors. Is it as scary though as switching to the television market, which decreased 37.9% overall? That was despite an increase in average selling price. And so here we have the exact opposite situation in the television department, in which they're actually charging significantly more per panel sold, but it looks even worse because total unit sales of panels for television decreased by 52.6% in a single year. Again, that is the definition of an ugly income statement. LG Display was built on television panels over decades, and we have hit the wall. The legacy television business is evaporating. But of course, this was mainly attributable to a decrease in the sales volume of the LCD television panels, which they consciously decided to shut down and kill before they needed to in order to more quickly focus on the new world. An increased proportion in higher value OLED television panels, as well as OLED smaller panels that you can put in all sorts of enterprise and retail settings. And so you're a multinational shifting its product mix very, very quickly. You prepared for this because you've seen this coming for well over a decade now. And again, pure luck, your domestic currency, the Korean won, depreciates against the US dollar. That makes it so that every time you make foreign sales, it's more valuable at home. But more importantly, anytime you buy domestic inputs, your cost of sales goes down, even if you're spending more. Did LG Display purposely wait until something like this happened in order to switch their business, retool their business so quickly with this huge boost from the economy? I hope not. That would have been kind of crazy, kind of risky to wait for something crazy like this much of a depreciation in the Korean won. But maybe they were aware of it. Maybe they did do it on purpose. purpose. I certainly haven't asked them. They are spending more on better, more advanced display panels, yet this Korean won situation has had cost of sales decrease by 16.1%. That is despite raw materials, labor costs, overhead costs, depreciation and amort. All of it actually increased as a percentage of total sales, yet the overall bucket of costs decreased substantially. In these supply chain type businesses, I always find inventories are extremely helpful. Well, here we have it. Inventories decreased by a little over 3% in the last year, and that was across every stage: finished goods, work in process, raw materials, and supplies, all decreasing. But why did this happen? Well, it's related to the advances, in my opinion, and while I am running out of hope that the company has actually explained what the advances are about, here they explicitly state that brand manufacturers of televisions, specifically televisions, remember they have 3 product lines and televisions is just one of them, their legacy one. These customers prefer long-term supply arrangements of their television sets, and LG Display here specifically calling out television and then telling investors that they believe they will continue to be well positioned to meet the requirements to win these long-term supply agreements. Now, since they haven't said that for any of the other business lines, only for the television manufacturers, it isn't much, but it is some concrete indication that that 1.2 billion in surprise advances are probably related to television manufacturing customers that are interested in LG Display providing OLED panels for television displays in the future. And so we saw they kind of aggressively shut down their LCD manufacturing earlier than would have had to. Perhaps it was contingent on the fact that they have made these advanced sales of OLED screens, and so they're shutting down the LCD resources faster in order to actually make good on these advances. Those things also fit together nicely if we assume that the bulk of that 1.2 billion is for television screens. Now, finally, it would be a little irresponsible to talk about LG Display and not mention their very intimate, let's say, relationship with the larger LG Electronics. Now, LG Electronics is a much larger company. It's a consumer goods company that makes all sorts of electronics, and it is also a giant Korean multinational. Now, LG Display, the company we're looking at today, the company we believe could be very undervalued, was originally spun off from LG Electronics several years ago, like multiple decades ago, in order to allow LG Display to use its patents and technology to not just sell displays to LG Electronics where it was in-house, but to start selling to other companies, many Chinese companies, but even a couple of Japanese and Taiwanese companies as well. As that has continued, as we saw, LG Display has expanded across all of Southeast Asia, has got its fingers in Europe and North America now too, but it's still focused on its reason for existing, its original reason for existing, which was taking the good technology LG had created in-house, allowing LG Electronics to still benefit from that technology, while also adding on sales to all sorts of other Chinese manufacturers and Korean manufacturers. For that reason, even something getting close to 20 years after the spin-off, LG Electronics is still the largest customer of LG Display, representing 15.8% of all sales in the latest year. That used to be significantly higher. It has been going down as a general trend over time, but it just kind of shows the legacy. LG Electronics still very much benefits from LG Display, offering them slightly good prices, not insane prices, but pretty good prices. They both benefit. At the same time, 4.8% of all of LG Display's raw input to its display panels were various components, as well as some logistics services that they paid to LG Electronics. And so the relationship goes both ways. 4.8% of all of LG Display's cost of goods sold was paid to LG Electronics. This is a clean split though. There's all sorts of agreements as two companies that have a history together, but LG Display and LG Electronics and LG Corp, another international conglomerate, do not control each other. There isn't much of a voting share game playing. This is not like that situation. LG Corp, which you might be tempted to say is influencing LG Electronics and LG Display, well, what's really going on is that LG Corp owns a couple of patents, which is a big deal potentially, but not a huge deal, especially 20 years later. The royalties being paid to LG Corp for the still used trademarks, which aren't even really patents, they're just more, can we call ourselves LG and use the LG logo on our displays? Well, they represent about 0.2% of sales, and so very much not a control game at all being played here. LG Corp more just sells the name LG and the logo LG to LG Display. Their relationship really doesn't seem to include anything deeper than that. Despite that, LG Electronics, while not directly controlling at all LG Display, it is still, even decades later, the largest shareholder. I think they own less than 10% of LG Display, but they own the largest share group of any other investor in LG Display. The fact that their largest shareholder is also their largest customer, it's something. I'm not personally worried about it, but you could easily see how some people on Wall Street would stay away from this just because of that fact alone. It is messy, it isn't ideal, but in this case, I'm not seeing anything that makes me think it's anything other than just history together, really. And they share a name, which is a bit awkward, but oh well. And so overall, we have a company here that has lost money in the 2023 season, yet got dramatically to the very top of the Sage Seeds artificial intelligence ranking. This company is shutting down its legacy supply network pretty much completely in this year. That did have severe repercussions to the income statement. I mean, this is an ugly income statement. I'm not denying that at all. However, we did find lots of almost unique situations as coupled with something that is a very classically safe bet. Focusing on the uniqueness, the management of US dollars alongside Korean won for this Korean multinational has provided a genuinely ginormous boost precisely when it was transitioning away from purchases in Korean wons and more towards purchases of raw materials in US dollars. Again, if they did this on purpose, they should be teaching business school or something. That was a very insightful decision that they made. But it also could have been complete luck and very fortunate luck. It's not quite a free lunch or anything like that. You know, they still have to use that money for business, and these advances have to make good, and they have all these long-term supply agreements now, so it's not a free lunch at all. It is a very healthy and stable situation for a company that at first glance you wouldn't expect to have anything like stability when it's television, the business is being chopped in half in a single year, and all these scary things that are definitely affecting the price negatively don't seem like a big deal when you have a couple of supply agreements and all the giant advances coming from that holding you above water for the foreseeable future easily. That's the unique side. The more kind of conventionally safe type of investment we have here is a demonstrated at-scale company reaching an economy of scale into which it now feels confident competing in OLED television, as well as this mobile and other application segment, which is now over half the business. It's at a scale where you struggle to think how the new world of screens everywhere is not going to have a significant chunk of it supplied by a company like LG Display. Now, I don't know the future, that's very true, but you would expect a company like LG Display, all of the qualities that it's showing, decades of experience across multiple eras of screens, and probably more diversified in the screen business than any other company on earth. This is the characteristics of a company that in this type of market would be able to very effectively compete on price in pretty much any of these more niche type of product lines. You mentioned medical equipment, you mentioned displays in all sorts of business settings, as well as the vehicle displays and the already kind of ingrained smartphone displays that we're surrounding ourselves with. There's a lot of hopeful prospects for a company like LG Display, and again, if you just look at that income statement, you could easily think this company is weeks away from bankruptcy or something dramatic. I mean, it's definitely not that, and I gotta say that the validation on this is leaning towards an approval. The Sage Seeds artificial intelligence does have a good point, I think. This was a deliberately uglied income statement. They chose this as the year that they were going to destroy their legacy business on purpose, shift to a new future, growing industry for sure, competitive advantages already kind of baked in there and have been for years. I'm liking a lot about this business and a little proud of the Sage Seeds AI for picking up on it. However, the ownership structure seems pretty straightforward, but there are multiple types of agreements which are not uncommon in this part of East Asia actually, but those are not exactly the most capitalist friendly markets if we're being completely blunt about it. Some of that is legitimate. There are multiple very important subsidiaries of LG Display which do make all of their business and manufacturing in China, and the ownership of those subsidiaries in particular is a lot more murky. It seems like in the best case you own about half of those businesses, being a Korean multinational trying to own a Chinese company. You're not really allowed to own more than half of it, and that's kind of the best case scenario. There's all sorts of increasing concerns about what it means to own a Chinese subsidiary, and that could very much play a part in the future of LG Display, because even though it's growing into Southeast Asia, Europe, and the United States very rapidly, it still has a huge chunk of its sales directly in China. These are the more obvious kind of difficult to interpret potential risks, but at the end of the day, we also have to understand that displays are being rethought. Clearly, any sort of technological shift that someone without an expertise in it might miss could also play a part into this. Now, LG Display does have decades of experience staying close enough to the cutting edge, but again, just another potential risk that stuck out to me looking through the annual report. I think there were even places in this annual report where the management said investors should understand the difference between back pain technology and other alternatives. I don't even know what the alternatives are personally. This sort of niche supply chain business really is best for the investors who at least have an interest in trying to learn about the technology that goes into screen panels, maybe the difference between liquid crystal display and the new OLED. And so a fascinating walkthrough from my perspective for sure. Overall, I'm leaning towards rubber stamping that it might even make sense to me as the most undervalued company in the 2023 season, which remember is the current season. 2024, the year we're currently in, is delayed relative to 2023 season because it doesn't make sense for the 2024 season to have started yet. We're still in 2024. How could we have reports for a year that isn't over yet? Thank you for watching until the end. Please let me know if you think I've misinterpreted or missed something important in the comments. Add your own wisdom, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next walkthrough.